Hi guys, my name is Miguel Rico. I am in the Communications 100 class with you guys. For my occupation, in terms of my speech, I wanted to do a more of a informative speech. I'm a iron worker and a welder. It's what I do every day for work, so I wanted to kind of base my speech more on that. Um, with iron working and welding, we work at heights a majority of the time. It's almost 90% of what we do. We walk on steel beams. We work off of scaffolds. Scaffolds are man-made structures that are like they're kind of like Lego pieces. They interlock and they can be changed out. We also work in like man lifts. Those are, you know, they they're either gas or electrical. They can either reach out or they can go up and down. Kind of, you might have heard of them. They're called scissor lifts or boom lifts. In my years in the trade, I've known people that have been hurt or seriously injured. It's definitely not a good thing. I have seen it happen. It's not a pretty. I haven't seen a fatality yet, but I've seen people get seriously hurt from having a you know an item fall from them from a height, or having a piece of equipment come down on them. It's never a pretty sight. Today I'm going to be talking about why fall protection matters, and why, the harness that we wear every day on the job is, our lifeline for why I get to come home every day to my family. You know, it's an annoying thing to have to wear every day, but, in case even myself, in case I ever do fall, I, it's going to save my life. In my industry, like, falls are the biggest cause of death in construction. If you fall from 60 feet and you're not tied off, the chances of you surviving that are very, very rare, or either you're going to have a very low quality of life after that. Like I said, we work in high places all the time. um, a lot of the accidents that take place whenever you see something happen, whether it be to you or to someone else, is because of a simple term called complacency. It's just kind of when you get too comfortable doing what you're doing all the time, and you start making mistakes. In my line of work, you're as an iron worker, you're going up in the air to walk on the beam to connect, and as soon as you get out of the lift, you don't tie off. In that moment right there, you could trip, you could do something, and you go over the edge, and because you forgot to tie off, your harness and your steel cable is not going to catch you. We use a lot of different pieces of equipment to work safe. One of them is called beamers. I don't have one with me right now, but it's a long bar with clips on the end. You clip it together on the beam, and it holds, so in case you were to fall, it would hold you. Or we also carry what are called cheater cables. It's literally just a long steel cable with two hooks on the end. You wrap it around the beam. From your harness, you have a pelican hook. You hook it to that, and in case you do fall, that's going to catch your weight and leave you dangling for a bit. In most construction sites, OSHA is kind of like the standard for safety, and on any construction site, they're going to tell you that, if you're at an elevation of 6 feet or over, where your feet are over 6 feet, you have to be tied off, because even a fall from 6 feet could do a lot of damage. I've seen it happen. I've seen people break their ankles, or even have a back injury from that. Another thing to do is, before we go up every time to to work, we always inspect our equipment, especially our harnesses. We inspect those on the daily, make sure that there's no nicks and tears. And on top of that, safety with fall protection is always evolving. We're always, if you're with a good company, they're always trying their best to get you the latest stuff, the best stuff. You could say the coolest stuff. Back when I first started, our cables that we used to have in our harness that were nylon, now they're actual steel cables, which I feel a lot more. It's heavier on your back, but I feel safer that in case you fall, that's gonna hold your weight better. Another thing is, it doesn't just start with the workers, with upper management. As a supervisor, foreman, or anything, you should always be, if especially since the foremans aren't, typically working as much as they used to. Those guys should always be looking at, people in the air working, making sure they're tied off, making sure stuff is inspected, kind of just being on your butt about did you inspect your harness today? Did you check for this? Is it in good condition? If there was damage with your harness, why didn't you tell me about that? And another thing is just staying alert. When you look at yourself, you tend to forget things, you miss things. It's all about perspective. And whenever you work with people for a while, you notice things that other people don't see. So it's always good to keep an eye out. When you work for people for a long enough time, you kind of become a family. So kind of like taking care of your work family, just how you would take care of your family at home. Because when you're working in construction, especially in dangerous jobs, every guy or woman around, every man or woman around you, um they all have a family to go to. And and you wouldn't like it if one day you didn't come home to your family. So you kind of want to do the same for other people and make sure that they come home. In conclusion, working at heights is part of the job, but falling doesn't have to be. So that's why we take these extreme practices to make sure that we go home every day. And just keeping up your fall protection and all that, and practicing every day and making sure you never skip a step is the keys to staying safe in this line of work. Just know your tie-off points, know what is safe. A good saying I heard one day is, if you tie off to something, think, can a 5,000 pound truck hold this, or can this tie off point, anchor point, where you're putting your cable to, can that hold the truck up? If it can hold the truck up, then you're pretty safe that in case the event that you do fall, you'll be all right. And that's my speech today. I work in this all the time, and I appreciate you guys taking the time. It's been a good experience in this class, and I feel like it's definitely going to do me good. Thank you, and have a good day.